Well, g'day everyone. Today we're catching up with Marty Lewis from Optex Consulting to talk about all things Frankenstein's monster. And we'll get into what that means a little bit later. But Marty, firstly, welcome. How you going?
It's the last week before Christmas, not to date this, but yeah, I feel like I'm having the same week that everybody has in their last week before they go on holidays. It's
Got
just
got
rush,
to get
rush,
it.
rush. Let's get everything done. Let's jam 3 weeks worth of work into one. It'll be great.
Got to get it done before Christmas. Hey, mate.
That's it. Can you just get this done before Christmas? Yeah, no
Yeah, yeah,
dramas.
yeah. It's like builders, everything.
Yeah.
Mate, so before we get into today, tell me a little bit about you, a little bit about Optex. What does Optex do?
So Optex is there for the business owner who is overwhelmed by the volume of options that they have for their technology. They're in a growing, predominantly service-based business, and our role is basically to say, hey, you've got all of this information at your fingertips if you have the data input and if it's actually working well. And essentially, off the back of that, if we have the right systems and process and structure in place, we can get the right insights and the running of your business can be less of a headache. Because if
Yeah,
you have a great product, but the actual delivery of it is problematic, the frustration is still peaking at that point.
yeah, 100%. And mate, what sort of clients do you generally work with?
We are almost exclusively service based business. A typical client for us is the professional who went, you know what? I don't want to work for somebody else. I'm actually pretty good at this. My professional skill set that I've developed, whether I be a tradie or a lawyer or a private health, like a physio chiro,
Yeah.
they're going, hey, I'm going to go out on my own. And then they've hit what I call a growth ceiling where because of they're good at what they do, more work has come in and they've put on more people. But now they're at a point of, hey, we've got to get this in line if we really want to take this to the next level.
Awesome. And how did you get into this line of work?
I have a random, strange history, but basically, I've always been in project management. And I would say that I've always had from like an early age, an affinity to pull things apart and go, hey, how do we end up here and break that down into small problem, small problem, small problem? If I knew what I knew at 35, at 15, I probably would have pursued a career in something around manufacturing, automation, or engineering.
Nice.
But I didn't really know that then. So I ended up in project management and general management, and the skill sets have sort of just evolved over that time. But yeah, it's sort of process mapping, process design. How do we get from point A to point B and factor all of the variables along the way?
Awesome. Awesome. And a lot of people need that kind of help. So today we wanted to talk about unpicking Frankenstein's monster. And that's something that you and I had a laugh about when we planned this session. What do you mean when you say Frankenstein's monster?
One of the great analogies of business, right? Frankenstein's monster. Um, what that means in a nutshell is software generally has been added in piece by piece by piece by multiple people without a clear and coherent vision for how it all fits together. So we end up with the marketing team or the sales team wants something here, and the production team wants something over here, and the business manager wants something over here. And all of a sudden, all of these pieces of software are conflicting with each other. We're quadruple entering information to move it from one point to the other. And that's the kind of scenario that people find themselves with what I call a Frankenstein's monster.
Fair. And so it's not the kind of life we want people to create, right? Um, what's a symptom? How do you identify whether you've got a Frankenstein's monster?
If you can't get the insights that you want, then you potentially have a Frankenstein's monster. If you have, and that's a very like high level, super easy. Like most people would say, I'd love better insights out of my business, right? Of course. But if there are like fundamental problems in connecting insights from your business, and particularly between what happens in your sales pipeline. So I predominantly think of a business in two critical stages: point of inquiry to the point of confirmation. That's our
Yep.
sales and project confirmation stage. We're going to, in most of my clients' cases, we're scoping, there's some kind of customization that goes along with that. There is a need from the business, from the potential client. It's not fully defined and developed. There is a scoping and an understanding of this is the problem, this is how we think we're going to fix it, here's our potential solution and how that will work. Then there's a point of agreement. Great. That's the first half.
Yep.
Then the second half is we've now got to execute that. So, in the management of that. Now, in particular, if you can't get insights between the front half and the back half of that support each other and show you the pathway of what's coming through your business, that's probably a symptom. And another big one is if you have like four sources of information of where you can go to get something. Because I have a record of that over here, but then I also have a record of my customers over here, and I also have a record of my projects over here.
Yep.
They're all symptoms that, hey, we've got a bit of a Frankenstein going on.
Yeah, and look, it's not just about having a Frankenstein. Let's talk about what the impact Frankensteins have on businesses. Because, I mean, you've already talked about visibility, but what are some of the other things, the side effects of having a Frankenstein's monster that people will experience if they have one in their business?
It really, so, and maybe a better way to answer that question before would have been to simply say, if I said to you that you're going to double the volume of clients that you have in the next 12 months, and that scares the crap out of you because you don't know how you would manage it, then you probably have some form of Frankenstein's monster,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We should have organizational structure, which is there to facilitate growth.
yeah,
So if you
100%.
said, hey, I've got demand knocking at the door, but I can't take it on because I don't know, staffing it is one part of the challenge, right? And that's an enormous part that we all face. But if the concept of just like the management of it and the behind the scenes and how do we track it and if the staffing is problematic largely because of that, not just because it's hard to get good staff, you go Frankenstein at some point.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because the staffing of it, there's a couple of problems that I see there. When you have a Frankenstein and you've got four sources of truth, you've got a couple of issues. One, you're paying expensive people to enter data four separate times, and two, if you've got good people, you're making them pretty cranky. Yeah, I mean, who wants to spend their day entering the same data into four different places, four different times? I get in trouble for saying it. I'm not allowed to say it anymore, but I'll still say it. Don't make smart people do dumb jobs. And if you have to enter the same thing in four different places, that's a dumb job. And it is going to piss off people who are valuable to your business.
Couldn't agree more. And I think if you can't say it, I'll happily say it.
I'm not supposed to
Recruitment
say
is
it.
hard, right?
Yeah,
Recruitment is hard. Retention is harder. And if you make smart people do dumb things, they will bail.
yeah,
I interviewed about 35 technicians at a service-based company
yep,
within the last 12 months. And the concept, the owner there was looking at like what do we do to retain people, right? Because we have people leaving for a bit more money or we have things. And people it really boiled down to as a technician doing three things. They wanted to come to work and do a volume of work that was uh, in line with what their skill set is and is somewhat challenging, right? They don't want to do boring, monotonous, dumbass stuff, right? They wanted the work to be well organized. I don't want to come to work and I'm good at my job, but the admin team is not up to scratch, or we don't have things organized, or the planning is up to shit, and that doesn't work. And I want to know that there's a career progression for me and what I'm looking for forward. And if we can satisfy those three things, we go a long way towards negate. Like just if you throw money at staff, but those three things are problematic, it won't matter.
they're still going to run away. Yeah, 100%. If
Yeah.
every day that goes to work sucks and you don't hit those 3 points, then they're going to leave, and
Yeah.
that's the worst. Hiring people is really hard, as you said before. So yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Um, how do you stop a Frankenstein from happening?
Well, we've been very critical here, but I want
Yeah,
anybody who's listening to be like, oh shit, like it happens, right? And it's
yeah,
very logical how it happens because as a business owner, we wear 16 different hats, and predominantly my client base start out as the billable unit within their business, right? So for them to take time away and go, oh, I'm going to look at how all of this fits together, it doesn't happen because there's billable work that needs to get done. There's another staff member who needs you. There's a sales call that needs to get made. Like there's all of these like really logical things that
Yeah.
just prevent it from happening. And it gets
Life.
pushed into the box of, yeah. And it gets pushed into the box of like, oh, it's not a priority right now. I'll deal with that later.
Mhm.
Yeah. The scenario that I see play out all the time is somebody gets really hyped up and like, that's it. This is the week. We're going to sit down and think about how it all fits together and we're going to put it together. But it's not their skill set. It's not their circle of competency in what they're actually really good at. And all of a sudden you sit down and go, okay, I'm going to work on sales. But if I look at sales, I've got to work out what products I need. And if I look at products, I've got to work out how that fits the accounting system. I look at the accounting system, I've got to work out what I want to see overall. And all of a sudden you're into this rabbit warren of interconnected pieces. You're overwhelmed and it's not your circle of competency. And there's 15 other really important things that need to get done, most notably getting some bills out, invoices out the door, keeping the billable work moving.
Yeah.
And it just gets squashed to a point of later. So that's one big reason.
Yeah.
And the other reason is there's no central point of control for it. So somebody comes in as your admin manager and they tweak a few things and then they leave. And the next person comes in and they tweak a few things. And there's no, you got multiple people tinkering with the same car, so to speak. And all of a sudden,
So you end up with the
bits
Homer
hanging
car
off it
from The
everywhere.
Symptoms. Homer car from The
Yeah,
Simpsons. Yeah.
there's no definitive vision of like what this car should look like.
Yeah, 100%. So, in short, what you're saying is that it's going to happen to a lot of businesses at a different point in time, and don't feel too bad about it because, you know, it's going to
I
happen.
see. I I hundred like it's gonna happen. Nobody is perfect at it. I do this for a living, and I still look at my business and see heaps of things. And I'm like, oh, we should put that better, and that would work better if we tweak this, right? That's part of it. It's also not a problem until it's a problem, right? So I see only two types of people value systems process structure, which is effectively the counter of Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
If you're going to have great systems process structure and the ability to grow, that's only going to happen when you've got to a point of we've got a huge demand for what we're doing, right? And getting to that point in business is no easy feat, right? So, and until you get there, you've got to like get all of the other stuff in order first. You've got to have your house in order before you worry about that. So that people are often not there, right? So it's not a problem right now because we haven't got to the point and we haven't had the cash to throw at it and the time because everything takes time and or money, right?
Time
Um,
and there's no or. It's both.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we haven't had the time and the money to throw at it
Yeah.
until now, but
Yeah.
now we're here, so let's do that. Alternatively, if somebody is well strapped and they know that they're going to do that, they're the only people that I've seen like take a really proactive approach to it and go, hey, I'm prepared to invest in this now, even though it's not going to pay me dividends this month or this quarter. But in 12 months' time or 2 years' time, it's going to allow us to keep pushing that ceiling of how much work we do faster. But you can only do that if you're funded to do it to start with.
Yeah. Or you can do it very leanly and very, very slowly, along the way. So we kind of talked about how you get into this situation and the fact that at some point nearly every service-based business is going to get into this kind of situation. How do you fix it? How do you go about fixing it? How do you pull apart your Frankenstein or unpick your Frankenstein and go, I really think the head should be on top of the neck, not on the left elbow?
Yeah. I always start. So once upon a time, we get smarter, hopefully, as we get a little bit older. I used to think that what I did for people was really unique. And what I found out was that what I do is just where the problem starts is the unique part. Right. So most businesses follow the same structure in that we have that core business of sale, inquiry, point of commitment of sale, deliver the service.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's our core business. That's what your customers are paying you to do. So I work backwards and go, what's the biggest pain point that you're solving? And if I could flick my fingers and solve one thing in your business, what would that be? That's the point. That's one angle to start with and say, that's where we're going to start because that's probably going to give us the most bang for our buck. The other part is to be able to take a step back and go, if I could start again today, what would this look like? What's the reporting that I want to see? What are the things that really give me insight to know whether this business is humming in the right direction or not? if I wasn't here, how would I get the insights to know that the job is being done to the quality and the standards that I want to see from my business? And if we start from like those two lenses, it usually gives us a pretty good foundation to go, okay, here's what it's going to look like or what we want it to look like. Here's where the biggest pain point is. Let's see how we can bridge the gap between those two places.
Yeah, awesome. Do you run the risk if you focus on one pain point or the biggest pressure at the time of creating a different Frankenstein? How do you stop that from happening and go look at it holistically? Like, what sort of do you bring tool sets or processes to that, or is it just an experience thing? How do you look at that and go, right, well, project delivery is our number one problem at the moment, but how do we stop that causing an issue for sales or finance down the track?
Yeah. So absolutely you can, which is where I really value that second piece of the conversation of like, how should it look?
Mhm.
Because we can quickly identify this is the biggest pain point and let's take delivery, right? So delivery is the biggest pain point. But in a lot of cases, I won't say all cases, but in plenty of cases, when delivery is a pain point, it's because the transfer from discovery, understand clients' needs, brief that, prep the project, load the project, get it started, most of the pain points down the end started way back here.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if we can solve a problem earlier in that process, then that's always a victory. And there's no perfect solution to it. The way that we do it is I have a program or a framework that I call Model Zero. And that allows us to basically lay out your core business from point of operation, point of inquiry through to invoices sent, jobs complete. We map that out and then we look at all of the what I call improvement opportunities.
hmm
Where are all the IOs along the way here? There's our QA point, there's our QA point, there's our QA point, there's all the improvement opportunities. And then we can effectively rack and stack them in a what's going to give us the most impact versus what's going to take the least amount of resources and what's dependent on one another. And from that process of how we work through it, then you can actually go, here's how we do it. So
awesome. So, and
you're
Model Zero is
listening,
something you've developed?
it is, but and I sort of it is, and I have customized it to the point of mine. It's kind of an inspiration from architecture. The concept in my head was if I was going to build a 20-story building, I would have a huge amount of planning and design and thought would go into that because I want to get 7 levels up and then find out, oh shit, I've got to get an aircon in here somewhere. Right?
Yeah,
But that's not the approach we take if we're going to have 20 people in our team. We just start and it kind
yeah,
of just gets pieced together.
yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, we find ourselves doing a massive renovation. Right? And that's okay because, we got to the point now it's time to strip back, do a renovation, sound up the foundations, and then we can put more levels on top of this thing. But if you don't, you're effectively building more levels on top of a very bad foundation and just duct taping it together as you go along.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to be in a building built of duct tape, as
No,
useful as
it's
duct tape
not
is.
ideal. Yeah, it's not ideal.
So, I mean, that then sort of comes back to who should kind of work with you. Then, or we talked earlier, what your kind of clients are, and so I guess then there are a lot of people who are at that sort of 20 to 30 point of staff, and they're looking at going, my systems are just not fit for purpose anymore. Maybe we need to go and do a Model Zero reevaluation of what we're doing and look at how we get the duct tape out, duct tape and WD-40 out, and replace it with systems and processes.
Um, yeah, and I am I love doing that. It is one of my favorite things to do to work through the process with an owner who has gone, hey, I'm overwhelmed at this point, or I just don't like it might not be overwhelmed, but it's just like I just know that I'm not the person to do this.
hmm Yeah, cool.
Cool. Then we can sit down and go, this, that, boop, 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 boop. And it's like it's very good for my ego because you're like, oh, that shit works, and that's how that works. And you've been on the other side
Yeah,
of the coin because you're like, okay. But it's just because like you write code for a living. You just know that better than I do.
yeah, yeah.
Like that's not like it's just what you spend time doing. So I have a distinctly dis I have a distinctly
I've been
unfair.
coding since the 90s. So, if I'm
Yeah,
not half decent at it by now, we're in trouble.
yeah.
Like
So
you
I have
don't
a
want me to build your house or weld your trailer together or do
well,
anything associated with that
and
kind
it's
of
fit
stuff.
for purpose,
Yeah.
right? So I I just think I have a really unfair advantage in that most people spend their time in their business and occasionally they get to work on their business.
Yeah.
When I am in my business, I'm working on someone else's business. So I spend a disproportionate amount of time thinking in a really high level and seeing different platforms and how this works for this customer and how this platform did it and how this customer used it and what they did here. And it's just like it's just an unfair advantage if you're coming off the street going, oh yeah, I'm gonna like try and catch up to that runway of things.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it'd be exactly the same as, jokingly said it before, you don't want me to build your house or weld your trailer. It'd be exactly the same as us walking into somebody else's workshop and pretending we could do their job, right? It's just not
You were
realistic. You
you were
could
talking
hack
about your
something
lease.
together, maybe. Is it going to last for very long? When will it fall apart?
Yeah. You were talking about your lease before. Like
Oh, yeah.
somebody who wrote that like has years of experience doing that.
Yeah.
And they can do that really fast
Yeah.
because that's what they do.
It's
And they
their job.
know that inside out. So it's also super overwhelming for people at the moment with just the volume of options that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
look at the Zero App Store and things like that. There's over 1,000 apps, and I've been in this
Insane.
space for over 10 years now. Uh, I don't know half of them. I don't know a quarter of them. The chances of anyone whose job this isn't staying on top of that is non-existent. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
I do this for a living, and I'm the first person to admit that, like, I don't know all of these platforms.
Yeah,
Right. So
you can.
you can't. It's just, and anybody who tells you that they're on top of it and they're up to date with all of the late, like, cool. I love that for you. I'd like to see it actually play out. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, mate. Sometimes I don't know what we've released in our platform this week until I read the release notes. Um,
yeah,
so,
it's
mate,
crazy.
we've talked about avoiding it, stopping it, fixing it process. What should it look like when it's finished? What are the benefits? So we've talked about the how you get into it and all the pain of it. When it's finished, when you've unpicked it and when you've put in systems, processes, platforms that are the right thing for your business, what does it look like?
Gold standard, which is like, it seems like a cliche to say, is, but like the gold standard that I am usually designing something in mind for is how do we get the owner the information that they need so that they have confidence that the critical pieces are done and done to the standard that they need without them having to physically see it and touch it, look at it, and be on top of it.
Cool.
Yeah. And that looks different in each business. And it looks different for the owner who's 40 years old and has a runway of 10 years or 15 years in front of them to the owner who's 59 and sort of is like, I want to get out of this right now.
To,
Or I'm looking to transition to a saleable point, right? Like that's the, if you want to maximize the sale of your business, it can't be dependent on you.
that's
So
a
it's
really great
really
point.
that simple. Is you
Yeah.
go, hey, if you want to exit this at any point and you get the best of both worlds, if you build it and you get it working where it doesn't need you every single day, every single hour, seeing everything, trust me, there's still going to be plenty of stuff for you to do. Right? But if you build it with that in mind, you don't have to sell it, but it's a lot more enjoyable to run that business than one that is you're tied to 18 hours a day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And let's
That'll
talk
help your
about that.
longevity.
And well, not just your longevity, but let's talk about it. The value. When you sell a systemized business, you get much better value when you sell your business than you do if you're selling it off spreadsheets, paper, and systems where everything's got to be double entered because it runs more efficiently and people, a potential buyer, can see the value in that business really clearly from a systems point of view. And I don't like, sure, spreadsheets are great and your accountant can do a lot of work to give you a really clear picture. But if a buyer can't log into your system and see very clearly where you got those numbers from, they're going to discount your sale price a fair bit.
Yeah. Well, they're at least going to have some very good legs to come back on and go, hey, no, 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 we don't like this, or we don't like
Yeah,
this, we don't like this. Like when you can put it out and go, hey, here's what works, here's how it does, here's the checks. And that the biggest benefit of that is not in the sale process, because the sale process will come off once, right? The biggest benefit of having that is in the framework that you now have to manage all of your staff. Because off the back of here's what needs to happen, we have what platform and where is our source of truth along the way, and who or what role is accountable for it along the way. So not only can you do that for a new potential buyer at some point in the distant future, you can start that tomorrow with the existing members in your team and start to actually give smart, intelligent people accountability and a foundation and a framework where you don't actually have to hold their hand every step of the way and they can execute some things and improve that process. But there's actually a coherent vision of like where all of the pieces fit together.
Yeah, 100%. One of the other things I quickly wanted to touch on, you talked about the change from the business owner's perspective. What about from the staff, from the admin team, from the finance team perspective? When this is done, what should it look like to them?
One of the great myths of doing this, and I say this to almost all the clients, is if we come up with something that is a perfect fit for everybody and everybody gets everything that they want, we're going to work out how we did that. We're going to put that into a bottle and we're going to sell that and we're all going to retire very rich because there is no solution that fits everything, right?
Yeah,
I want to spend more time. And that goes like that's a broad principle,
yeah,
right? Every solution has a potential downside. Want to be fit and healthy? Cool. Was going to have spend some time at the gym and spend some time away from your family and commit to that, right? So there are trade-offs for everything. So the thing that the entire team gets out of it is an understanding of, well, yes, I did get some trade-offs, and there's some pieces in this that I would have liked other ways. But you know what I have? I have the context of knowing that when I do it this way, it helps the broader objective of what we're all trying to do. And a rising tide floats all ships, right? So if we all win and we all progress, then we're happy to sacrifice and lose a little bit of our own personal for the greater good, as opposed to, well, I just want it to work 100% for me and everybody else because they can do whatever they want.
yeah. I mean, you could theoretically do that if you had tens of millions of dollars to spend on systems customization and your process never changed. Uh, but for
That's yeah,
most of
yeah.
it,
There's a long list of variables there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that probably brings us to another key point: change management. Because you said everyone's got to compromise a little bit. How do you actually get people to do that?
Well, I think this is just as hard as the actual select, implement, change. Like the going through that process as a team will be something that either unifies your team, bonds your team together, becomes a really positive experience, or it'll be something that tanks it and ships it. Because and I don't stand here in my glass house because I have been on both sides of the
hmm
implementation where communication has lacked and things have gone wrong. And I would say that my biggest lessons from that are just talk more. Like
Yeah,
it can seem counterproductive to just talk and you're not actually do it. Like the thing to do is build the thing and implement the thing and get it moving, but sometimes they're just like bringing everybody along and taking an extra minute on that journey is going to pay dividends because unless people are there at the end of it, it doesn't matter that you got there a week or a month faster.
yeah, yeah. From my experience, you cannot just decree from on high, this is what is happening at every stage. You can, as an overall, you need that. You need to go, guys. We are making this systems change together. Here's how we're going to involve the team in it and bring them along in the process. But yeah, it is incredibly important to bring the team along with you and get everyone doing the same process the same way to make sure it works. And yes, there will be compromise with off-the-shelf systems, even with full enterprise systems. I mean, we can go back a little while now and talk Queensland Health Payroll. They've spent $1 billion to get nothing. Um, but yeah, you still change management is an enormous part of it, and if you don't bring the team with you, doesn't matter how good the system is, nothing will change and nothing will get better if no one changes what they were doing.
It's just and there's no like I said, if again, if we work out I'll keep you posted. You and I can split the difference. If we ever work out a magic way to do that and it doesn't require everybody's input, like and we can just roll it out and then
Just
everybody
magic.
just loves it
Yeah,
straight off the bat,
yeah.
that's
We
worth some money.
yeah we call that the magic button internally. If you just press the magic button, everything works the way I want it to.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
just want the magic button.
Yeah. It's not
Awesome.
much to ask for, is it?
No, no, that's all right,
Yeah.
mate. Final thoughts. What should the business owner who's 10, 15, 20 staff, who has a little bit of a Frankenstein, who wants to, get things on track, what's the first thing that they should do?
thinking about this before and like what's the practical step that somebody can do? Because like it's all well and good to be and exciting to work with somebody to do it, right? But what's the piece that you actually do yourself? So the thing that I would start with is take stock of what you have and just go back to thinking about that core business, right? So start with that and go, when somebody phones or emails and says, "Hey, I think I need my that business," where does it start? And then what happens between there and getting the deal? Is the is that the bigger challenge, or is the bigger challenge after you get the deal and you've got to deliver it?
Mhm.
So if you split it in two and then focus in on that, but take stock of where are you putting things
Mhm.
into that. So what I mean by that is where are you putting information in your software and who is responsible for it? Because I would say that if you can't sit down and sort of map out, here's half a dozen key steps along the way of how we deliver value to a customer. And if you can't sit down and go, here's an org chart of like loosely the key roles that we have, not the people, because you might have one person doing six roles. If you don't have those two things in place, all of this will be incredibly challenging for you. So if you start with that and go, point of inquiry, point of deal, point of delivery, where where are we putting information along the way?
Yeah, awesome.
Org chart, who's responsible for it? Where do they fit in the business?
Perfect. The other actionable step that they can do is pick up the phone or jump onto your website, Marty. If somebody wants to outsource this because it's not their experience and it's you have an unfair advantage on how to do it, how do they get in contact with you?
You will, I'm going to say optex.com.au. I actually have a landing page to be built. But you'll find me on LinkedIn. If you Google me, there's a host of resources there. We're on all of the social media platforms under martylewis.operations. But yeah, if you Google Optex Consulting or look me up on any of the social profiles, reach out and say good day.
Awesome. Marty, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tony. You too, mate. All the best for Christmas.
Thanks, mate.